As the ANC braces itself for a special NEC to discuss corruption, the former President Jacob Zuma has rubbished President Ramaphosa's letter to party members. Zuma says the letter is flawed in many aspects. The former president also says the letter lacks a basic understanding of how leadership of the ANC communicates. Zuma also criticized Ramaphosa's presidency, claiming it has not fulfilled resolutions of the 54th National Conference, such as the nationalisation of the Reserve Bank, land expropriation and radical economic transformation. For analysis on this, we are now joined via Zoom by political analyst Tessa Dooms. Tessa, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the SABC News channel.
Good afternoon.
What are you reading from this latest letter by the former president to the sitting president?
Well, I think it certainly does put into perspective what the letter from the president of the ANC does to the way the ANC communicates with itself. It is unprecedented that the president of the ANC would address the ANC in a public forum in a type of open letter, as it were, and that has opened the door for a public discussion and a public debate to happen. And while, of course, on the record, this letter was not meant to be for public consumption and only for ANC members, that means that even a member who's paid their 10 Rand sitting somewhere in the Northwest would have access to the letter, and thus the ability for it to become public would have been known by former President Jacob Zuma when he wrote it. And so we now know that the ANC is going to be having its battles and having its fights more and more in the public domain, which on the one hand is bad for the ANC in terms of its ability to, spin what's happening within its factions, but on the other hand is good for the South African public because it gives us a bit more of a look into the way the ANC is engaging these issues. And I think the one big issue that the president raises is the issue about collective responsibility, which we know is a long-standing line that the ANC has always used when it comes to the issues that it's addressing in society, saying, one person standing before the public court of public opinion is the entire ANC needing to take responsibility for wins and losses and what it does. Yet you have a former president of the ANC telling a current president of the ANC that each individual leader, each individual member should take responsibility for their own actions, which seems quite contradictory with the ANC's history as well.
All right. So in his letter, the former president, as I quote, he says, "I've decided to take an unusual decision to respond to your letter in writing, which is something that I'm not used to because I normally favor engaging the discussion within our structures rather than writing a letter." Is this a direct challenge to the current ANC President Ramaphosa from former President Jacob Zuma?
Absolutely. It's almost like a reprimand. I mean, we've seen time and time again when different members of the ANC's rank and file, some of its youth members or youth league members or just members of the rank and file who on social media might express a view, being reprimanded by the party saying, the time and the place to have these kinds of discussions is within the movement. And so the former president here is calling out the current president almost for hanging out the party's dirty laundry in public and going against that kind of culture within the ANC. So it's a very strong sense that it's not just saying, well, you're fair game now, but it's almost a rebuke saying you don't understand the organization you're running. And in this climate, that speaks volumes to the political standing of the current president.
Yeah, because that's what basically the letter says. He emphasizes the fact that the current president does not understand how the ANC communicates. But in a nutshell, what does this say about the factions within the ruling governing party? Because we had a political reporter here at the SABC, Samkelo Maseko, who was basically saying what we're seeing now is the two factions, the Ramaphosa faction up against what he calls the SG Ace Magashule's faction.
Yes, I mean, what we are clear about, and even again using this letter as a clear reference, is that not only did Ramaphosa's unity project not succeed within his government, and the balancing act that he's tried to do in cabinet, in parliament, is not succeeding in terms of just things like the youth league and the NYDA process. being very much a factionalized process. Basically, you've seen the 54th conference resolutions being brought up in a very factional way in this letter, very much putting forward the things that the RET faction, for lack of a better word, would have prioritized, and saying that the president is focusing on only in lip service some things in the 54th conference and completely ignoring others. And so saying that he himself is a hypocrite in that he is factionalizing the conference resolutions. And it's a very, very clear statement about there not being the unity that Cyril Ramaphosa ran on.
And I would want to believe it's quite a difficult one for President Cyril Ramaphosa, because as it is now, he's battling two major crises. You've got the president now having to look at the economic meltdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and now we have this ANC's internal politics playing out and the corruption mess. What does he see, or what should he see as a priority going forward? Can he even choose between the two?
Well, our political system doesn't allow him to choose between the two. And I can't think at any point that this president has not been conflicted between the two. Even in his time as deputy president of the party and country, I suspect that there were conflicts that he was dealing with in terms of how much he knew about corruption under the administration that he was serving in, whether he would say anything and jeopardize his own chances of being elected as president. I think that there's a long-standing argument that can be made that he's always had political considerations. And I think maybe the questions that need to be asked, and I think that the former president is asking in this letter, is, are these considerations just about party or country, but are they also about party, country, and the president's own personal political ambitions? When the question of CR17 comes into the fore, it's very much about the president's personal standing as well. And so I think there are a lot of things that this president has to hold in balance, and I'm not sure that he's getting that balance right in favor of the people he ultimately serves, the South African population.
All right, so the NEC, Special NEC meeting has started, we understand. And one of the issues on the agenda was said to be the issue around the former eThekwini mayor, Zandile Gumede, who was now deployed into the province's legislature. We've just had the ANC in the province now basically saying that all its leaders who are in positions in government and in the party should step aside until they've been cleared by the courts. What's the saying? Because one could also argue that this is the very same ANC that had placed her and deployed her in the provincial legislature.
I mean, certainly there's just that first level of potential hypocrisy to be read into it. But I think it also opens the door to questions like, what does an accusation actually mean? Does it mean an accusation by a court, a charge at a police station, or like in the case of the Gauteng PPE scandals, when we have Kuselo Diko and the MEC, Bandile Masuku, being accused not necessarily in court papers, but in the court of public opinion. In that sense, if an accusation means that you cannot serve, then even the accusation put to the president around CR17 and the kinds of issues that are being raised in the letter by the former president may make him a person who's accused, and thus accusation leads to not being able to serve. And I think Ace Magashula a few weeks ago was criticized for saying that he will not step down based on accusation that is unproven, exactly because of this point, because accusation could mean a wide range of things. And I think it is going to open up an increasing can of worms.
All right, we have to leave it at that, I'm afraid, due to time constraints, but we thank you so much for coming through. Tessa Dooms is a political analyst talking to us about the latest developments wherein the former President Jacob Zuma has written to the sitting president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, raising a number of issues regarding the letter that Ramaphosa had written to party members last week.